Okay, I want to say some things about Chapter 4 of Bertrand Russell, Bertrand Russell's Problems of Philosophy, and it's called Idealism. Let me read the first paragraph. The word idealist, or the word idealism, is used by different philosophers in somewhat different senses. We shall understand by it the doctrine that whatever exists, or at any rate, whatever can be known to exist, must be in some sense mental. This doctrine, which is very widely held among philosophers, has several forms and is advocated on different grounds. Anyway, it's the doctrine that whatever exists must in some sense be mental. Let me make one comment about what Russell said. When you're reading philosophy, philosophers will generally, as a rule, they will tell you definitions are very, very important for clarity's sake. So when you write a philosophy paper or when you read philosophy, pay attention to the importance of definitions. It's very important. Definitions are very important, and that's why he starts out this chapter 4. The word idealist is used by different philosophers in somewhat different senses. That's one of the characteristics of philosophy, all the way back to Plato. It's the importance of definitions. Whatever you're talking about, make sure the reader knows exactly what you mean. This doctrine, he says, is so widely held, this idealism, that everything is mental, is so widely held and so interesting in itself that even the briefest survey of philosophy must give some account of it. Now, let me say one thing about what he just said. This doctrine is so widely held. This book was written in, I think, 1904. So in 1904, that was true. Idealism is no longer so widely held. Very few philosophers nowadays I believe in idealism. So when he says it's so widely held, it was widely held in the 19th century under the influence of Hegel. In 1903, Bertrand Russell and G.E. Moore broke. That's 1903. I think is considered the year when Russell and Moore broke away from idealism. Russell used to be an idealist. It is no longer so widely held anymore. Very, very few people are idealists. Those who are unaccustomed, he says, to philosophical speculation may be inclined to dismiss such a doctrine as obviously absurd. There is no doubt that common sense regards tables and chairs and the sun and the moon and material objects generally as something radically different from minds and the contents of minds, and as having an existence which might continue if minds ceased. That's what common sense tells you, that this table is physical. It has nothing to do with my mental state. It seems absurd to say that everything is mental. Common sense tells you that's crazy. But Russell says, it is not crazy. Whatever the truth is about the world is going to be strange. It's going to be weird. Berkeley, Leibniz, great philosophers, brilliant minds. Leibniz created calculus. He believed that everything is made out of souls, these infinite mental monads. So, whatever common sense tells you, that is not the criteria. Common sense tells you that quantum physics is crazy. Richard Feynman says anybody that thinks they understand quantum physics doesn't understand quantum physics. The world is beyond, so at least the world that's been revealed by modern science is beyond anything that human beings can comprehend. So when you're reading a philosophical thesis and it seems to totally contradict common sense, don't worry about that. It's irrelevant. Quantum physics contradicts common sense, and scientists say that if there's anything that is beyond dispute in physics, quantum physics is true. It passes all the tests. Russell says that we think of matter as having existed long before there were minds, and it is hard to think of it as a mere product of mental activity. But whether true or false, idealism is not to be dismissed as obviously absurd. And then he goes back and talks about something he talked about in chapter 1 about sense data. We have seen that even if physical objects do have an independent existence, okay, they must differ widely, very widely from sense data, from what we perceive, the colors and the sounds and so on. The table I'm looking at has certain colors and a shape, but the real table, if there is one, Russell says in chapter 1, is going to be very different from the sense data that I perceive. We have seen that even if physical objects do have an independent existence, they must differ very widely from sense data and can only have a correspondence with sense data in the same sort of way in which a catalog has a correspondence with the things cataloged. Hence, common sense leaves us completely in the dark as to the true nature of physical objects. And if there were good reason to regard them as mental, we could not legitimately reject this opinion merely because it strikes us as strange. The truth about physical objects must be strange. It may be unattainable, but if any philosopher believes that he has attained it, the fact that what he offers as the truth is strange ought not to be made a ground of objection to his opinion. Okay, I'm going to stop at this point. This is just an introduction to chapter 4. Actually, what Russell says of these first 2 pages is really a key to understanding how philosophy works. It doesn't take anything for granted. The truth about physical objects must be strange. That is confirmed definitely by modern physics. So this chapter is going to be on idealism, basically Russell's rejection of idealism. But the fact that he rejects idealism doesn't mean it's a stupid theory. Actually, he himself believed in idealism for a long time. So chapter 4 is... We've read chapter 1. I didn't assign chapter 2 and 3. Chapter 2 dealt with the existence of matter. I'm not assigning these books the nature, because we're reading a lot of stuff and I can't assign everything. But chapter 4, since this week we're reading Berkeley, no, I didn't assign Berkeley, Leibniz, and Leibniz is an idealist. He didn't believe in material objects, so... and then we will be reading Berkeley, Bishop Berkeley. And then we will be reading Hegel, too. Hegel dominated the 19th century. Hegel was an idealist. So this book on chapter 4 is about idealism. We're also reading Descartes this week. Descartes was not an idealist. Descartes believed, he was a dualist. He believed that there are minds and matter, and they're two totally separate substances. An idealist believes there's only one type of substance, and it's mental. There are only minds and ideas. This chapter here, basically you have an idealist. Russell used to be an idealist, and he's now turned against idealism. So he's offering you a critique, of idealism. Idealism used to be very big. It used to be a dominant philosophy. And so that's why he says, it seems to be and it was, when in 1904, it was probably most philosophers were idealists. But today, in the last 100 years, idealism, very few philosophers are idealists nowadays. Anyway, I will stop at this point, and I will come back to it.